Welcome back to the Conscious Entrepreneur podcast. My guest today is Mark Kosoglow, a name well known in the go-to-market space for his strong points of view and his insights. Now, Mark built his reputation as the first sales hire at Outreach, a really successful software company that he helped to scale to over $230 million in revenue. And now he's stepping into the CEO role for the first time at Operator, a startup incubated inside the GTM fund. This conversation is fun because it's a rare look inside the mind of a first-time founder who is balancing the excitement of building something new with the realities of entrepreneurship. And we talk about what made him take this leap into founding the company, the lessons that he's learned and bringing with him from Outreach and from Catalyst, and the new approach that he is taking to outbound sales and the entire go-to-market motion. Also, I want to mention before we jump into this that we are in the middle of planning for the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit 2025. This is going to be the fourth annual event. It's coming back to Boulder, Colorado on May 28th and 29th, and I can't wait to see many of you there. As you know, this is the only in-person event that is totally dedicated to the well-being of entrepreneurs, and every year the energy in the room is incredible. If you haven't been before, this is the year to show up. All right, here's my conversation with Mark Kosoglow. Hope you enjoy this episode. Hey, Mark, awesome to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me, Alex. Good to see you today, brother.
Yeah, good to see you as well. I'm excited about this conversation. You're LinkedIn famous, right? So you're well known on LinkedIn in the go-to-market realm as someone who has very strong voice, strong points of view on a lot of things. And I was excited to see you start to talk a bit about your entrepreneurial journey recently on LinkedIn. And one of the things that I thought would be really cool for us to talk through on this podcast in particular today is, a lot of my other guests have been very experienced CEOs. So people who have done this multiple times, or they've been at their company for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, or they've gone through multiple businesses. But for you, this is the first time that you've been a CEO. And so I think it's really worthwhile to explore that and unpack that for our audience so that they get to understand, what does the world look like through your eyes? And so, Mark, what I thought we would do is just to start off, tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life, say 12 months ago, that made you think that now is the right time to be starting a business. I didn't mention this, but you're the CEO and co-founder of a company called Operator, working in the AI space in the go-to-market field. So what was going on in your life, both personally and professionally, that you were like, you know what, I want to go do this? What kind of itch were you scratching there?
Yeah. I don't know if I was scratching an itch, man, to be honest with you. I was coming off, I think, a really successful run at Outreach, where I was the SVP of global sales. I was the first employee and ran sales to about $230 million. Not many people know this, but I was fired. I had missed a couple quarters in my 8 years. I missed the COVID quarter, and I missed the first quarter of the economic downturn. And the company decided that I wasn't the right person to kind of lead us through the next phase. And so I'd formed a unbelievably strong friendship with Manny Medina, the CEO at Outreach. And we had an adult friend conversation and decided that it was time for me to go. And as I started to look at what I wanted to do next, I felt that there was a movement from pre-sales investment by companies to retention and expansion and post-sales investments. And so I looked around for a company that was willing to have someone come in with crazy ideas, just like Outreach was way back in the day. They adopted so many of my crazy ideas that were baked into the product. And I was looking for a company on the post-sale side that would do the same thing. I'm a big zigger when everybody else is zagging. And so I went to Catalyst. We doubled that, about almost double, 5.5 to about 10.5, the revenue in about 14 months. And it taken them 5 years to get to 5.5 million. We'd gotten to a point though where we'd launched some new messaging and a new category creation project that we called customer-led growth. and it was really having an impact on our revenue, on this entire space and category. And a PE firm came in and decided that they wanted to acquire us, to merge us with one of our big competitors, to kind of create this competitor to Tango had a very enterprise motion. Ours was more mid-market SMB, and combine those together to create like a full motion, but with the story that we created at Catalyst. And selling to CS is very difficult. CS are some of the hardest working people I've met that care the most. In most companies, they are not empowered. They're not invested in. They're looked at as a cost center. And because of that, it was very difficult to sell into those roles. And I just wasn't really enjoying what I was doing there. A lot of it had to do with the fact that like CS doesn't have a real methodology. Like we could talk about BANT, MEDIC, MedPIC, all the million types of sales methodologies. There's no CS methodology. After 20 years, CS, well, actually I'm 25 now. CS started in like about 2000 with Salesforce, where the first person with a customer success title was ever created and moved beyond just a support rep. And and in 25 years, if there's no framework, to me, I just had misread what that part of the revenue cycle was about. And unfortunately, what it's about is putting out fires. And that's all that most executives understand about it. So I knew I wanted to move out of CS. And so I have a good friend named Max Altschuler who runs a venture fund called the GTM Fund. He started a company called Sales Hacker that Outreach had acquired, and we became really good friends and really strong, peers at Outreach. And he came to me. He's like, "Hey, man, would you want to start a company? I want to incubate a company inside my fund." And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, why not?" I was like, "I don't want to run a company." He's like, but Max knew what he was doing, and he knows how to push people's buttons. And he started pushing my buttons, and he was like, "Hey, well, there's an idea that I have. Could you at least explore it since you have some time?" And so I started exploring it, and 5 conversations turned into 10, 10 turned into 50, 50 turned into 100. And when I started to get to multiple dozens of conversations, all of a sudden, guess what? I now was like, I'm into this. Oh, I have an opinion. I actually have an idea. I have a solution. I'm starting to get a little passionate about what's going on here. And so all of that led to eventually I did agree to Max's offer of, "Hey, why don't you run a company incubated inside the fund?" And very happy I've done that. But it wasn't like I was out there looking to do this. It wasn't like I had an idea in my head. And quite honestly, I think that that's been a huge benefit because I don't have any biases or preconceived notions that I'm trying to tear down, or I'm just listening to what people are telling me what they want and then combining it with what my experience tells me is needed. And that's, I think, led to a really strong thesis that we're operating under at Operator.
That's cool. So first of all, I just want to reflect that I know a ton about the post-sales CS space as well. I've been in this space for a long, long time on the account management side with Capta and now with Amplify. And you're right. There's no methodology. It's a little weird that this whole department that typically looks after about 71% or more of revenue in a typical year, they're totally regarded as like a cost center, an afterthought. I always call them the unsung heroes, but I know that they do not get the recognition or support that they deserve, and as a result, that whole industry has not bloomed in the way that you would expect. I think we keep waiting for the one real big champion to emerge there. There's Gainsight, but we haven't really seen a whole ecosystem of great companies emerge around it. And I think it has a lot to do with what you were saying. Anyhow, we're not going to get into the details of that, but I did want to reflect back that I know what it's like to sell into a tough market. And so you were doing that, and it sounds like you're running low on gas at Catalyst, meaning, hey, this feels like pushing a rock up a hill. You have an opportunity because they get acquired and merged into another business. So you then have an opportunity to go see what's out there. You connect with Max. He says, "Hey, I want to do this." And is he your co-founder in the business? Is that how this works, or are there other people who co-founded it with you?
No. So I have a co-founder. His name's Adam Meyer. And so when Max said, "Hey, let's start the business and incubate it inside our fund," he's like, "You need a technical co-founder." And I have a guy that we've worked with at Outreach. I have never actually met him, and he'd done some projects for us as a contractor. And he's kind of a great 0 to 1 guy, and he's a designer, and he has a high technical aptitude as a design, in addition to his design skills. And so he introduced, and he was looking to start a company, and actually is the one that had talked to Max about incubating a company inside the fund. And so Adam and I met through Max, and I hear a lot of bad founder stories, and I've seen some bad founder situations, and we just got really lucky. Adam and I think, are both easygoing people that are very simple. We're very simple. We're easy to get along with, and we've really meshed. And I'm a little bit more impulsive and have an immediate opinion and thought. He's a little bit more measured and wants to think through things before he forms an opinion. And so we really, really balance out each other's a lot. And we both value the strengths that one another has versus, getting annoyed at them. And so, yeah. And just to clear things up, dude, I was not running out of fuel at Catalyst. I wasn't having fun. And so fun is what is important to me. Fun is what helps me feel like I'm getting something out of it. I know if I'm working hard and having fun, the money will come. But when I'm working hard and the money's there, but I'm not having fun, then there's no enjoyment. And so it wasn't necessarily like a fuel thing. It was more of fun. I coached all my kids' sports teams all the way through high school. I've been on soccer fields and basketball courts more than, that 99.99% of human beings on the planet in those years. And honestly, I would always tell all of my kids every single time, the two things you need to work on, to be good is work hard and have fun. And that's kind of how I live my life. Is work hard makes you feel like you're contributing. Fun is the thing that fuels your ability to work hard. And so if you have two of those, you're ready to rock. And so, and I'm having a lot of fun doing this. So that's fueling all the hard work that I need to do. Right.
Tell us about Operator, the thesis you have, the challenges that you're trying to address in the market.
Yeah. So, I feel somewhat responsible for the current state of how Outbound is performing because of my role at Outreach. And unfortunately, Outreach wasn't designed to be this toxic use of automation, but people have taken it to that level and they use it incorrectly, right? And what's crazy is we never used it like this internally, the way that some of our customers use it. We actually started to try to build a bunch of stuff to prevent that from happening, but people figured out, and used it the way that they would use it, like they do most tools, right? So I'm coming in with this idea that there's so much noise in the system right now in Outbound that everybody is learning the way to deal with it isn't to process it, is to ignore it. And so we've entered into the age of the great ignore. I ignore my cold calls. I ignore my emails. I ignore LinkedIn DMs because 9 out of 10 of them are useless, irrelevant, and poorly written and ridiculous. And I would rather spend my time doing whatever I want to do rather than wading through all the stuff to find the gold nuggets, right? So at Operator, what our thesis is that if you only reach out to accounts that have provable business problems that you provide value for, and you can prove someone is suffering from that business problem, then that's when you need to reach out. And so what the thesis behind Operator is finding provable business problems that people are suffering from, and then creating messaging that's related to those areas that attracts people into conversations with you because they're so insightful, versus chasing somebody down by doing 23 irrelevant touches and wearing them down to the point where they're like, yes, I'll meet just because to get you to shut up.
I like the way that you're also somewhat taking responsibility for the current state of the world, because these automation tools have it's just a mountain of bullshit all day, every day, that we're trying to wade through. And it's so hard to figure out, like, what do I do with this? The other thing for me that I find is I find all these requests to be an imposition on me, right? Like, people are asking me about stuff that I didn't think about when I woke up this morning, and they're like, you should be doing this or that or whatever, and let's have a call and let's do this. And it's like, why are all these people like trying to get my attention, but then also trying to control my thinking about a certain topic? So it feels a lot like people are trying to take my power, my energy, if you will, away from this. And so good of you for saying, look, this was not the initial intent when we were working at Outreach. It's what it's like exploded into. And now with Operator, we think we have a better way of tying this back to actual business problems, actual business outcomes that people are looking at.
unfortunately, because of people's behaviors and how they've responded to the challenge of extremely inefficient and ineffective outreach, what they've done is they said, well, I can get a 1% reply rate reliably. And you know what? Math says, well, if I need 100 meetings a month and I can get one meeting for every 100 emails that I send out, well, I'll just multiply 100 times 100, and if I send out 10,000 emails, I'll get a new meeting. And that's what we've done, is we've used math the wrong way to solve the problem incorrectly. Instead of saying, well, maybe our messaging and our targeting is so ineffectual that it's leading to these rates, what we've said is, well, I can get a 1% rate, and now I have the tools and the means with which to create the volume to make a 1% rate reply rate work for my company. But the problem is it's not just the reply rate. Only about a third of the replies actually book a meeting. And so I just recently did some math and used some very simple conversion metrics. And if a third of your replies book a meeting, if 1% of your emails get a reply, if you send, 2 people emails in a company, and I kind of took it all the way, if your meeting book rate is this, if your hold rate is this, if your qualification rate is this, and your account penetration rate is this, and I took all those normal benchmark numbers, Alex, it takes 185,000 accounts that you have to email per quarter in order to generate $2 million of outbound revenue with email. In that thing, if you have a 1% reply rate and a 0.3% book rate on your emails. And so that's what people have done, is they're like, well, shoot, if the problem I need to solve is volume, when really the problem is quality. You know what I mean? Like, I don't drink water off of my roof by catching it, one drip out of the gutter at a time. What I do is I put it under the faucet and let the water go in there. And well, what we did is we put out 1 million cups around the edge of a house and hope we can catch enough water to take a shower, versus being like, you know what, maybe this isn't the right way to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Got it. Cool. Well, one thing that I'm curious about, that I think a lot of the other folks who are listening to this podcast will be interested in, is to learn more about what it's like to start a business within a fund. So we've had people on this podcast before we've had a whole number who are traditionally venture funded. We have some who are bootstrapped. There's at least one who I can think of who talked about the venture studio model, where you kind of have multiple companies that are emerging underneath there. But tell us kind of how it worked in your context. What sort of arrangements did you come up to with Max, the funder? Are they looking at kind of the typical VC model here, where they need 100x return or 150x return out of somewhere in their portfolio, or is it a different structure? And how did you negotiate and navigate that?
Yeah, listen, I think that Max is a reasonable investor. I'm sure he'd love his 100x hits, but you can make money off singles and doubles and triples too. You don't always have to hit a home run. I think that he does have high expectations for our company and for me specifically, because we've done some really great things together. I don't know if I understand what he's specifically thinking about how our investment should work, to be honest with you. I think what I understand more is, what do I get from being so tightly associated with a venture fund in a way that is more than just taking money? And so, like, for example, GTM Fund has a guy named Paul Irving. Paul is like Saint Paul to me. He's like, if I got a problem, I call Paul. Paul helps me. Paul helped me set up payroll. Paul helped me do this. Paul helped me do that. Paul got us incorporated. Paul got all of the original investor documents together. And so what I was able to do is I did take less equity than a normal founder. But the amount of time and effort and stuff that I don't want to deal with, I didn't have to deal with hardly any of it. They took care of all of that so that I could focus on 2 things: creating brand awareness and building a product that creates value for my customers. And those are the only 2 things that I think about. I've hired a COO we're in our 3rd tour together right now. She worked with me before Outreach. She was my number 1 rep at Outreach for 4 years, and just legendary status there. She went to Pendo, was one of the top enterprise reps there. She then became a VP of sales, and now she's my COO. And so I have, they endorsed that hire because they know me and we're tightly, connected and aligned. And then that allows me then to make sure that my focus as the CEO, it isn't all of the noise around the business. GTM Fund and Pleasant, my CEO, take care of the noise so that I can stay focused on the areas where my greatest strength is, which is talking to people, understanding, breaking down concepts, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's the difference that I hear in a lot of the founder peers that I have that I talk to is just, I would say 30 to 40% of their day that's just spent on things that need to be done, but don't necessarily move the business forward. That, it's kind of one of those things where like you can do something that moves the business forward, keeps it the same, or prevents it from moving backwards. I don't want to do things that prevent it from moving backwards or stay the same. I only want to do stuff that's moving us forward. So being incubated inside a GTM fund kept me from having to do the two things that I don't like to do and don't want to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this is a misconception that a lot of people have when they're running a business is they think, oh, I need to do everything, right? Everything is on my shoulders. And I'm doing everything from the accounting to the payroll to paying vendors to the, whatever, LinkedIn posts and designing the website. And the real trick to uncover, and this is something we talk about all the time at Conscious Entrepreneur. In fact, it's the theme of our summit in May of this year. The real thing is like, how can I just do the things that will help me to find and unlock 10x growth or 100x growth or something really, really significant. And we actually do that, just like you're saying, by subtracting things from our life and our work, not by adding to them, so that you can then go figure out, how do I spend my time in my zone of genius? How do I spend my time doing the things that I'm uniquely capable of doing? And I can hire people and outsource all the other things out there. So it sounds like you're fairly well along with that.
Yeah, like listen, the first time we hired somebody, I could have sat down and figured out, how do we get them employed? How do we get them paid? How do we get them benefits? We did all that. But I hired a extremely competent, aggressive COO who just, the first time we hired somebody, I called her and I was like, hey, Pleasant, we just hired somebody. What do we do? She's like, Mark, I already got us all set up for payroll. I got us set up for this. They've already signed all their documents for their taxes. I was like, holy crap, and I didn't even think about doing that until we'd hired him. She'd already done it all running up to that. And now I don't want to make light of how important the contribution she makes on the revenue side and on the product side are, but the stuff that she does operationally for us as COO, it frees me up to not like, what value is it for me to figure out how to do payroll? It's zero. There's no benefit of me doing that when I can have someone else who can do that so that I can do the thing that I need to do to move the business forward, which is talk to people, talk to customers, talk to prospects. Your prospects, I'm treating the CEO role much like a sales role. In sales, people will tell you how to get them to buy something if you just listen. And in the same way, I'm finding that my users will tell me what they'll pay for if I just listen. So I spend a lot of time asking questions and listening, and then doing what they tell me to do within, some guidelines of acceptability, right? Like I'm not going to go like often make pink elephant, Pez dispensers that no matter how many people tell me that that's what they want, right?
So you've worked for some pretty high profile CEOs. So Manny Medina at Outreach, and Catalyst had well-known CEOs, the Chu Brothers.
Chu Brothers, yeah.
Chu Brothers, yep. Okay. So what have you learned about yourself as you stepped into the role of CEO? Like, what are you taking from folks like Manny and the Chu Brothers? What are you doing on your own? What have you learned about kind of how you show up in the world as a CEO?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I take from Manny is Manny had an unrelenting desire to do things in an excellent way. He just would not accept somebody's B plus. He wouldn't accept their A minus. And he had a very provocative way of getting people to do better than they thought that they could do on their own. And so that's one thing that I've learned from Manny a ton. Manny is also a voracious learner. I can't tell you how many times I've been over to his home, and sitting next to his couch on the table isn't the remote control for his TV. Sometimes I didn't even know if he had a TV. It was a book on scientific experimentation as he's trying to figure out what the A/B testing feature should work, how it should work in outreach, right? So those are two things I picked up from Manny. And then Kevin.
So just to follow up on that, what are the things that you said he has an unconventional way of getting great performance out of people? What was that?
Yeah, I think Manny is so inside his ethnicity is a certain thing that is probably hard to replicate. He is half Russian and half Ecuadorian. And so he has, in some ways, the kind of relaxed nature of a Latino, but he has this driving militancy of a Russian. And so I would say he probably favors the Russian side at times more, but having that juxtaposition, that fire and ice, that oxymoronic condition of, hey, I'm going to push you hard, but you know what? If we all hit 10 million this year, we're taking the whole company to Cabo and nobody's bringing their laptop. And so like, to me, that was a little bit unconventional to feel a leader that had these two polar opposites parts of their DNA and their personality, and watching them use it. Like me personally, Manny can be very fiery and very, very passionate, as most Russians and Ecuadorians would be, right? And but what you have to learn about Manny is he has a need for deep intellectual debate. That is what fuels him. He's highly, highly intelligent, maybe the smartest person I've ever met. And what he loves is to get into a debate with you where he can test how strong are your core beliefs around what you're deciding to do. And a lot of people look at that as combative. But once you understood that, no, he's also this lovable Latino guy that like just wants to hug you and cook you sausage and beans when you come over to his house, then you understand that more militant pressing side is the side that drives the excellence, but he's doing it from a place where it's because he cares and he wants the best out of you and the best for the company. And so that was I love Manny. I still consider us, and I think he does too, really, really good friends. And but I did learn a lot from him because he's just a very different type of a person that I'd never come across before in my life.
Cool. Great. Awesome. And he's someone who I've only seen from afar, but certainly seems very accomplished. Seems like they've built a real interesting company there at Outreach.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we had an amazing culture for a very, very long time. And it was supportive and positive, but had a strong sense of accountability. And to me, that's the right balance, and definitely something that I got to experience with Manny that I hadn't experienced professionally previously.
And I've only seen the Catalyst founders at a distance. Tell me about them.
Yeah, so the founder that I worked with the most was Kevin. Kevin was the COO. And one thing that I admire about Kevin, I don't know if I learned this from him, probably learned this from my dad, which is Kevin is one of the hardest workers on the planet. If you call him at 7 a.m, he's working. If you call him at 12 at night, he's working. And there's people that do that because they have that hustle culture, but there's people that just do it because they're workers. And, that's their personality. That's what Kevin is. Kevin worked hard, and when he took time off, right? So, but that was something I've always admired about Kevin. And then the other thing is Kevin's superpower to me was his ability to put on an event and to make someone feel very, very special. And I think that's definitely something that I learned from Kevin, which was, how do you create an atmosphere and an environment, an event, a dinner, a gathering of people, but do it but to think about all of the little details and to create an experience around it that promotes the brand and who you are and what you want people to think about you, and not in a manipulative way, but in a way that's like, we want to be thought of this way because this is who we are, not because we just want to take your money. And so I think that kind of authenticity and his desire to always be like, I want everybody to leave this event saying this is the best event they've ever been at. They got so much value out of it. They felt like it was so well run. And I just saw him do that again and again, where he built a following that followed Catalyst because he created an environment where people felt like, hey, I understand what Catalyst and Kevin are about and what the product is about because of the environments that he created.
Those are great inspirations. And I can imagine that you're growing a lot just having been around them over the last decade plus, like just kind of learning from them. And so how does this inform you? Like what's Mark's style as CEO?
Yeah, well, listen, I had a big org at Outreach. I had a smaller org at Catalyst. Um, I think and I'm old. Most people don't look at me and think I'm in my early 30s. I'm almost 50 years old. I'm pretty set in my style. I'm a positive encourager who will jump in and wants risk to feel like something that's very natural and easy to expose, because we're going to lean in together and jump in together to get it fixed and to move on. And I want clear communication. I want to have very deep personal relationships with people, not just professional. If you talk to most of the people that I work with, like, I recently did a post on LinkedIn, like my biggest hack, I think, in my career has been, when I go to a city, I don't go to a hotel. I sleep on the couch of someone who I think is my friend, who I want to be a better friend with. And so I've slept on so many people's couches or their guest bedrooms. Like, even when I'm in New York City right now, I just stayed my co-host at 30 Minutes to President's Club, the Leadership Edition. Armand and I are good friends. And I called him and said, hey, I'm coming to New York. And I stay with Armand. I don't stay at a hotel. And so that to me is like where I want to live. Is I think that when you have deep, authentic relationships with people and you inspire them, that they'll do 10x the work and the effort and care about things 10x than other people will. And I always tell people, like, there's only two things that really matters. Are you going to work hard, and do you give a shit? And if you don't have those two things, then I don't care what else you have. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care about how technical you are. I give a shit. What I care about is, do you give a shit, and will you work hard? If you give me those two things, I can help you be great at whatever you want to do.
And when you think about, so I just want to check my facts here. You've been doing Operator since April 2024, more or less.
Yep. That's when we.
Okay, so just under a year. Let's say about a year.
Yep.
What's been surprising to you about being a CEO? In what ways is it easier than you thought, and in what ways is it harder than you thought? Most people I talk to, they tell me how hard it all is. I'm just curious if there's anything we've ever overlooked where it turns out it's easier than we thought.
It's easier to make decisions because ultimately I'm the decision maker. So if and I'm not like this type, but if I need to make a decision and put my foot down and make everyone disagree and commit, like, that's easier. There's more responsibility behind that if you're going to operate that way. But like one thing that frustrates me is overthinking and talking past the obvious solution. Like, I'm a science fiction fan, and I'll never forget the first book I read that talked about Occam's razor. And I was like, what is this? Some kind of weird, crazy alien weapon? But, Occam's razor basically says that the simplest solution is usually the right solution, or the solution with the least amount of variables and complexity is probably going to deliver you the best result. And so I believe in Occam's razor. And what frustrates me is when you get in a group or you're trying to decide something and you make it more complicated than it is. And so that's easier for me to contain that as a CEO and be like, hey, conversation's ended. We have found what we need. We don't need another 2 hours. Let's end it and make a decision and make a call. So that's easier. What's harder is everybody talks about the roller coaster of emotion. I was aware of it. I thought I watched the founders of Outreach go through it, but they were really, really good about hiding it, or they just didn't do it because we were so crazy. But I do know that it took them a couple years and a few pivots to get to Outreach. So I know that they felt those same things I did, probably way more. But it is, as I'm sure many of your guests have talked about, it is, you wake up at 5 a.m. and you're scared out of your mind. And why am I doing this? And then by 7 a.m., you're like, oh, I'm going to crush
decision
it.
Ever.
Yeah. And then by 10 a.m., you're like, wait a second. What was I thinking? And then, and it does that like 5 or 6 times a day. And it really is, this is what I would equate it to. It makes you feel like you've gone back to being like 6 years old and unable to control and understand your emotions. Mm-hmm. And that as an older person who I think is, one of the biggest compliments I ever got is when one of my leader said, Mark, when I come to you, I always know what Mark I'm getting. I'm not getting mad Mark. I'm not getting happy Mark. I'm getting just Mark. Mark is always Mark, right? And I feel very centered in who I am and how I think and how I feel about things. And this experience has opened me up to, I do not have some of the tools that I think I should at this age to be able to control and manage some of my emotional states. And not that I'm like freaking out or having panic attacks, but I do think I could if I allowed myself to. But yeah, I think I've definitely exercised a different level of emotional maturity in this role, because without it, I'm sure I wouldn't be a fun person to live with at home.
What do you tap into to make sure that you stay regulated and sane to the extent possible?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is the most important thing in my life is being a dad. There's nothing that operator is going to do or not do that's going to make my kids love me anymore. I've invested in my kids in their entire life. They're older, 24, 22, 20, and 15. And I don't care. As long as I'm being a good dad and helping my kids, nothing else really matters to me. So operator doesn't matter to me. That's the first thing is like I have created some mental constructs that separate me from the outcome and who I am from the outcome of operator. Whereas most founders are so wrapped up in the success of the company, it defines who they am. Operator is not in my first 5 definitions of who I am as a person. I'm a dad, number one. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I have been lucky. Like I'm not like a normal founder that's like, hasn't had success in their career and stuff like that. Like, I need outreach or operator to pay off, but like, I don't have like a complete reliance on it financially. I'll be okay and figure out if it fails what I'm going to do next. That's another thing. I have a very routinized morning routine that includes, I meditate for 10 or 15 minutes. And right now, like I do focus. About half of my meditation is on focus and on half of it is on anxiety control. And so I do practice guided meditations on how to control my own anxiety. Then I read for 10 or 15 minutes. And I listen to audiobooks at 2x, so I can consume a lot of information in that time. Then I work out for 10 or 15 minutes, which, there's a lot of science around that. And then I do my LinkedIn post for 20 to 30 minutes. That's my morning routine. And that routine, the ceremony of it helps me a ton. So those are 3 things top of mind that I've used to help deal with those roller coasters.
I like that. I like that a lot. Any good books in your Audible these days at 2x?
So right now, operator is a lot about messaging. And so I am doing I'm deep into a few academic papers and a couple books about what happens in the brain when you read, and something called the reading reward loop, which is something that says, if I read something and it's simple to understand, I get a dopamine hit because I get the reward of actually understanding what I'm reading. And because of that dopamine hit, I'm inclined to continue reading. And then the more that loop works, the more that I read. And then 2 other things happen in that reward loop. One is because I can understand how you're communicating to me, I feel innately connected to your tribe because we speak the same language and I understand what you're trying to communicate. And the second thing is any change proposed in that kind of a setting feels much more doable and achievable than when the writing is complex. And so that's one of the big things I'm studying right now is how do we get our messaging to be very simple to activate that reading reward loop. And then I read a lot of sci-fi. If you want to read the best sci-fi books on the planet, Pandora's Star and Judas Unchained by Peter F. Hamilton. There's the Void Trilogy, which is 3 more books after that. Get ready to waste 160 hours of your life on those 5 books, but you will enjoy every minute of it.
Fantastic. I'll throw one back at you, which has been really impactful for me lately, which is the book 10X is Easier Than 2X by Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. Ben Hardy is actually coming out to Boulder for the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit in May. But that book, I've read it twice. I've listened to it once on audiobook. I'm actually about to have Ben Hardy on the podcast. and it's all about what to do to think exponentially instead of thinking incrementally in what you're doing. So I really like that one. Put that one in your Audible queue. Well, hey, Mark, thank you so much for being here. What I liked about this conversation was you've got a lot of things that are the non-traditional founder CEO route, right? You just met your co-founder. You're funded through you're kind of incubated within a venture fund, and so those are things that are fairly new, right? Like they're kind of unusual for a lot of people. Sounds like you've got a really, really great approach to it. I'm excited to see where this goes. Congrats on taking the first big step with Operator, and we're all rooting for you, man.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you, man.
Great to have you here.